now go through the discussion of our top 10. So this format, we're trying to have a new, a fresh one. So we're gonna flash the stocks that you've selected, and we will ask our experts some short comments on them. We've presented this in this way based on how many votes it got from our Facebook group. So it's from the most number of votes to the least number of votes. So your number one stock is actually Metrobank. And here we also flash to you the current stoplight for value, momentum, and sentiment for Metrobank. So let's start with this stock. Ms. April, any comments on Metrobank?
Yeah, I'll just share our general view on the bank. So banks have actually been one of the worst performers this round, or not this particular round, but during the past few months, I would say, since the start of the pandemic, because of course the concern is they will suffer from very high NPLs. And the thing is, right now, they're still booking very good profits, but first of all, the loan demand is already weakening, and we're seeing margins starting to contract. So this is the same across the board. As far as NPLs are concerned, we're still not seeing the full effects yet, because under the Bayanihan 1 and 2, diba, there's a loan moratorium. The borrowers can choose not to pay their loans. So marami pang nakakalusot. Kasi there's a technical definition of default. So the NPLs are not yet materializing as much, but the banks are quite aggressive in setting aside these provisions. And those are actually pulling down the profits. I guess the worry is, of course, where's the visibility and how bad is bad? People still don't know at this point. But, that said, among the banks, at least the big three banks, Metrobank is the cheapest of them all, trading at only half times price to book. So really, I mean, if you're talking about a value stock, Metrobank is definitely a value stock. I don't think that the current valuation is warranted. But then again, it still has problems because we don't know how bad can get.
So, Miss April, just to clarify that, yung price to book na sinasabi natin na yan. So, pag binenta niya yung mga assets niya, kalahati lang yung priced in. Okay, so sobrang mura.
Yeah, sobrang
Alright.
mura.
In my case, ang tagal ko nang niligawan yung Metrobank, ma'am. Pati akong busted, so nag-video tuloy ako. Anyways, Sir Juanis.
Well, look, let's look at it in 2 points of view. I think in the long-term point of view, I see a letter U-shaped recovery here, and I think in a matter of time, I think this will do well. In the short term, I'd rather buy it towards a 50-day, like I said earlier on, that's closer to 40. So my short-term aspect is, if it can pull back, I'll be buying Metrobank. So I like this, but like April said, it'll probably turn around gradually.
Okay, all right. So our next stock is one of the recent favorites. We have Ditto. No visibility on the value, but the momentum is, I think, so as far as our stoplights are concerned, still quite green. So, Ms. April, any comment on Ditto?
Yeah. Pinahirapan niyo ako. No, I think, okay, the rally, as you can see in the chart, the rally began somewhere in August. And this was driven by, I think, the excitement over the Bayanihan 2 law, which said, I think Bayanihan 2, which talked about the permits that they could actually, but they don't need to get these permits to put up the towers except for the building permit. So yun na lang. So mapapabilis yung pagpatayo ng tower, improving the ability of the Ditto to execute, and also the tower companies were given, I think, some level of approval. So, and then Ditto came out with all these press releases about how they're doing, how they're confident about rolling out, etc., etc. But our concern about Ditto, the listed company, is because Ditto CME Holdings Corp does not own the asset that, or the real Ditto that owns the third telco license. Okay.
No.
There is a promise to inject it, but as of this point, it hasn't been injected, and we don't know when it will be. and how much it will be.
Oh.
Actually, di ba the other day, I think, Chelsea Logistics announced that they will be, actually Chelsea owns 25% of the Ditto that really owns the telecom asset. Okay, so sinabi nila they will inject it to Ditto. But you know, there are 3 Dittos. Ditto CME Holding Corp and Ditto Holdings and then Ditto Telecommunity. So Chelsea said they will be injecting Ditto Telecommunity into Ditto Holdings, not Ditto CME Holdings. So iba pa yun.
Okay.
They're just gonna inject it in their own company. So they still own 25% of it. Ganon. So parang confusing, no? But yun lang sa akin. Maganda yung kwento, pero it still lacks that clarity. I'd like to see some more. And my other worry is, of course, when you inject it in and it actually starts to operate, I don't think it's gonna be profitable right away. It will take time. It's not gonna be easy for this company to be profitable right away.
So I guess that's the answer to one of the questions from our customers here. No? So sinasabi niya, ano daw yung connection ng Dito CME tsaka yung Dito Tel. So meron pa palang isa pa na Dito Telecommunity. But Miss April, sino yung may hawak ng franchise? It's Dito Telecommunity, yung hindi listed, ano?
It's not listed.
It's not
owned,
listed.
Yeah, it's owned 25% each by Udena and Chelsea.
Okay, so very interesting. Pero binibili yung Dito. Okay.
Because there's a promise to inject.
There's a promise to.
But there is no clarity yet on the schedule and the price.
Oh, very interesting. Sir Juanis, any comment on the stock?
Well, I think we're going to see more of these seesaw type of swings, especially in the condition that they're currently in. Of course, on the technical front, these corrections usually come. It generated what looked like a interim double top and was the reason why prices had fallen very sharply in the last 4 or 5 days. But I'm glad to see that earlier on, after a very strong pitch down earlier, it managed to be able to find some footing, managed to climb up, stay above the 50-day moving average, and manage itself to be able to close at 611. I hope this can rally a little bit more, but I think it might have problems trying to climb back up towards 7 pesos. That should be more gradual, hopefully, in line with what the company is performing. So similar to what it happened here in the earlier side, I think we'll probably get a corrective move after the rally will finish, and then I'll allow the fundamentals to be able to catch up. You will only get these big swings when you don't see the fundamentals too clear. Once those little earnings numbers start coming out, you're not going to get these types of movements in Ditto anymore. So for those people trading it, you can trade it during these phases because there's a lot of question mark and nobody really knows where the price can go because of valuation. So for those who like to trade this seesaw type of movements, you can continue. You'll probably still see a lot more volatility here.
I guess, sir, another question there is if there is clarity on the transfer of the asset, can we expect more activity in the stock?
Well, hopefully, so at least you know what asset it is that you're buying.
Okay, sir. Our next stock here in the top 3 is BDO. And I think Ms. April already shared the outlook for the banks kanina. No? So,
similar lang naman. Yeah, similar to Metrobank. BDO is just a little bit more expensive. But that said, historically, BDO has been a little bit more expensive because they've been a little bit more aggressive. As for the trends, medyo similar naman yung nakikita natin sa Metrobank. So, yeah, it's the same view. We also like BDO.
All right. Sir Juanis?
Well, in my case, I mean, BDO seems to be the weakest of the banks, at least of the main banks. But I think it'll have its day. I see a higher low May there, and to me that's a good sign. Continue to be able to hold on to your position here. You might have to wait a little longer, but I'm okay with this. I think you'll see this back to 100, 103 or 105.
Yes, sir. I will hold on to that position. So, our next stock is one of our favorite stocks, MPI, Metro Pacific. Ms. April, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why it has rallied. Well, first of all, it fell because of the water issue. And then it recovered because Duterte said parang hindi na siya galit, diba? And then I think the catalyst for the latest recovery is the company finally, resuming its share buyback program. So yun.
Okay.
But this stock is really super cheap because it owns Meralco, it owns the toll roads aside from Maynilad. So even if you assume that Maynilad will become worthless, you still have upside to this stock. It really is a very cheap stock. I think we're targeting 7 peso 50 centavos.
Okay.
So yun. Yeah.
Just to clarify that, Ms. April, yung buyback, so the owners are buying back the stocks now.
The company is buying back.
Companies buying the stocks.
And also, in a way, the businesses are defensive. I'm not saying they're not affected by the pandemic. They are, but of course, the reduction in power usage and even the toll roads is a lot less compared to, say, eating in restaurants or partying and shopping.
Okay, all right. Sir Juanis?
So far, the technicals still look good for this. I feel it's coming closer to an overbought condition because if I understand it, it has a 69 RSI. That means that you're almost overbought. But I was thinking this would pull back a little bit. It hasn't done that. Volumes seem to be shrinking in November. That's actually good because that tells you that the selling is not really coming out too much. It's being absorbed. So hopefully can try to maintain this, but I would rather be a buyer closer to 370, 380. I would hold what I have. Hopefully we can hit our target first about 450 first before it corrects. I'll keep my fingers crossed that can happen.
Okay, all right. Our next stock is ASEN.
Yeah, AC Energy.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, very good story. There will be a lot of power companies injected into the company, and mostly renewable energy pa. Assuming that Joe Biden wins, di ba? Pro clean energy, and also even our DOE said that for future power plants, they want more of clean energy. So of course, the sentiment now is more in favor of clean energy companies. So AC Energy should be a beneficiary. Our only issue is, of course, it's no longer cheap. It's just a bit expensive.
Okay, all right. Kaya yung Vinya is also, I think, red.
Yeah.
Sir Juanis?
Okay. Maybe I'll also acclimatize with April's answer here. I feel it's overstretched. And if you remember the staircase type of recovery I was showing you, here's a typical example. So, for example, surge in the beginning of August, flatten towards the rest of the month, surge in the beginning of September up to mid, and then flatten all the way till the beginning of October, and then surge again, and then you're now in the flattening phase. So now you anticipate either a sideways or reactive move, like I pointed out earlier on. So if you can get this closer to that red line, right now it's at 332. So hopefully between 350 and 340, I think that'd be better buy.
All right. So our next stock, another one of the hardest hit by the pandemic, is Jollibee Foods Corporation. Ms. April, any comments on this?
I think there's a lot of excitement because if you listen to the company, they're very optimistic. They have this glass half full perspective. Okay, they talk about how their foreign operations. Actually, if you listen to what they say, it's very impressive because they say that this pandemic has been a blessing to their foreign operations, and they are very confident that their smash burger, which smashed the results last year, will be turning around by next year with conviction. Ganon na. And even CBTL, they're very confident that it will be turning around. They're on track for the recovery of these companies. The bad news is, of course, local operations. Sabi nila mabagal daw talaga yung recovery. So that's another indicator that our recovery in the Philippines is really weak. So inamin nila yon. But then they have this 7 billion peso write down. So they're saying, well, with the 7 billion peso write down, and anecdotally, you can see a lot of Jollibee branches closing.
Mhm.
They're quite confident that you know their earnings next year will already match 2019. Ganun sila ka-confident. Kaya kung kwento-kwentuhan, uy, ganda. Parang okay. Diba? But you know, that said, the 2019 earnings are not the strongest earnings of Jollibee. If you should recall. So yeah, maybe you could justify the stock going up to the current levels, especially with the good rhetoric. But to go back to where it was before with, you know, local operations still recovering slowly, maybe it will take a while.
Yeah.
You know, that's my opinion.
Show us the money first, you know. All right. So, Sir Juanis.
Well, I think this is a classic situation where investors are, not so focused on that immediate money, but they're saying, is the worst over? And after parking itself already for 4 or 5 months and breaking out over 150, 149, I think the investor just went back inside. They just heard a little bit of the stories that the company is issuing, and that's the reason why we've had this very sharp up move. But the price is quite very overbought. Jollibee, I have that with an 82% RSI. That's extremely high, and that can open itself to a wider correction. And support right now is at 159, 160. That's a bit too far from me in terms of heralding risk. So I would wait for a pullback for Jollibee, but this is one issue I'd want to buy into a reaction.
Okay. All right. Our next stock is Megaworld. Is April?
Yeah, we actually like Megaworld. Okay. Okay, before we talk about Megaworld in general, we can talk about the property sector. So we know as far as the property sector is concerned, the resilient segment has been offices. But then that said, even if it's resilient, may may qualifications din. The resilient offices are those that are being leased out to BPOs and have PESA accreditation. So if you don't have it and you're not located in the prime BPO areas, medyo sad ka. No? Malls, of course, are decimated. Residential, well, they are able to sell. They just have to give more attractive payment terms. So that said, Megaworld is more heavily, at least its rental portfolio is more heavily in offices rather than malls. And the offices, okay, the worry naman on the offices is the POGOs, right? Because we're now reading that the POGOs are finally exiting the Philippines. The good news is, although Meg has a bit of exposure to these POGOs, the offices that they are leasing to these POGOs have PESA accreditation, which means they can easily find BPO tenants to occupy the offices that are left. And I think the best part about Megaworld is that the stock is very cheap. Okay, so valuation is below 10 times PE, trading below book value. So really a very cheap stock, if you ask me. I think there are still, I mean, there could be reason for people to stay bearish in the short term. I don't think profits will increase on a year-on-year basis. But if you want to talk about, have you seen the worst? Well, there's a bigger chance that we've seen the worst in Megaworld than, say, the other property companies because of the nature of its portfolio of assets.
Okay. Sir Juanis?
Well, to me, the chart looks like you've seen the worst. So any pullback here is a buy for Megaworld. It looks like it's coming out of a cup-like situation. So I think it's just a matter of time. Although it's a bit a laggard because a lot of issues have moved way ahead of it. But I think it'll have its time, and go ahead, hold your stock, or if for those who haven't bought it yet, between 320, 310, a good sweet spot to buy.
All right. Okay. Next up, we have Mart. Again, no visibility on the value, at least for call advantage. Momentum also no ratings. Miss April, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, this is a stock that, of course, very future we have to look way into the future, because I think the excitement is towards its future plans. If we were to look at earnings right now, well, hindi maganda kasi, I mean, it's not that it's losing money, but of course, it only has so many grocery stores and convenience stores. And as I showed you earlier, diba I showed you an exhibit on FMCGs. Mahina yung benta ng third quarter, especially for the convenience store types. So I think Mart will also be affected. But then I think the reason why people are buying this is because of the excitement of the dream of Inchap Sia on how he could expand the grocery store segment and his new format, etc.
Okay. So Juanis?
Okay, I previewed this stock actually in our video on IPOs. Maybe some of you guys also might want to have a look at that. And if you remember what I said, it's coming out of its accumulation phase. So that means we should see this level of aggressiveness. So that's actually quite good. Like I said, just wait for the pullbacks. It should be a good opportunity for you to do it. I know, like April said, might take some time for the earnings to come out, but looks like people are trying to be able to project much further down the road, and that's the reason why. Just don't chase the price. Wait for prices to make a little reaction back to support to your 20 or 50 day, and that'll be your entry.
Okay. All right. Next up, one of the last two is Ayala Land. Ms. April?
Yeah, I think fundamentally Ayala Land, if I just look at the portfolio, it's not as attractive as Megaworld because of the sharing, no? Mas heavy reach sa malls. And then, yun nga, offices would account for a smaller share. But then, I think what sets Ayala Land apart is, well, if you choose between SM Prime and Ayala Land, which are two relatively heavyweight properties in the index, SM Prime is a lot more expensive and a lot more heavily exposed to malls. And Ayala Land is cheaper and less exposed to malls. So for that reason, it might seem to be more attractive to investors.
Okay. Juanis?
Okay, just like Megaworld, it's a little late, but I think it's already crossed the path of the difficulty, because if you were to draw a downtrend line here from its June to October area, it's broken out of that. Now we have a higher low and higher high, so it looks good to me. A little on the overbought side, so I'll just be, again, a buyer into pullbacks for this 30, maybe between 33 and 32.50.
Okay. And our last stock, we have GT Capital. Ms. April?
Yeah. Again, if you look at my, I have this exhibit which shows the standard deviation of PE ratios. GT Cap is one of the cheapest stock.
Nasa dulo halos.
Nasa dulo siya, as in how many standard deviations below the mean. So it's really a cheap stock. And I think the catalyst for the shares to move this way is, of course, the performance of Toyota. So people are again starting to buy cars, and that is the expectation that the worst is over. And of course, the stock is cheap.
All right. Sir Juanis, parang gumalaw na.
Gumalaw na nga. But like April said, I think given the fact that its pricing is proving to be a benefit for this, perhaps the pullbacks over here might not be too deep. So maybe a pattern might come now that it's hit the next resistance at 500. Next one's about 530. So just wait a little bit. And if you have it, maybe you want to take a little longer approach, because I think this is reversing and it just has one more barrier to go. But I like the formation, and this is a good resemblance of what the overall market is showing you. And that's why, of course, it looks good. But of course, in the short term, we're just dealing with these little streaks. Wait for the pullbacks. I think the market should be able to give us something more after this.
All right. So there you have it, guys. Those are the top 10 stocks.